As you can see, the leaves are starting to change, and that means it's a bad time to put on the winter tires. Maybe a little bit early, but I much prefer having these tires on here anyway. So I do have two sets of tires. I have a summer set and a winter set, as you can see. For my winter tires, I believe they are, let's take a look here. They're Mastercraft Course MSR Snow Groove tires. As you can see, I take them off every year, so they still have plenty of tread left on them. Great tires, never gotten stuck with them. And yeah, summer tires, here they are. A little bit different kind of rim, but they're getting close to have had enough, so I may get another season out of them, or I may replace them this coming summer. We'll find out. Yeah, so I'll talk about these summer tires real quick. I actually found these tires on Craigslist. I found the rim and the tires as a complete set, and I got them for like 600 bucks, and I've gotten about 3 years out of them. And you know, just for a new set of tires, geez, what are you talking? You're talking 800 to 1,000 bucks probably for, you know, the tires and labor and mounting and balancing. So I saved 200 bucks, and in addition, I got these nice set of rims, and I also saved my winter tires. I got those because a guy was putting them on his, well, he had an F-150 and he was doing like a nicer set of tires, or bigger tires and tricked out rims, which, you know, it'd be nice to have, but I get by just fine with what I have, and that's all I need. So one quick tip I want to give you: if you do what I do, you have a summer set and a winter set of tires and rims. The tip I use, I only have my winter tires on for probably 4 or 5 months out of the year, and then the following year I'll rotate them, so the front tire will become the back tire. And the way I do that is, first I take each tire off one by one. So I'll take this tire off, and then I'll do a real good wash. I'll, you know, get all as much grease and crap out of there as I can, as you can see, which is pretty good, but I can't get it all out of there. Some of it's baked on. And then after I do that, say this tire last year was on the rear, and what I do, I just write on the rim where it's going to go this year. So this year it's going to go on the passenger front. And as you can see, on the year before, I'm kind of surprised that stayed on. It was on the passenger rear. So that's just a good way to make sure you keep your tires on the same side of the truck, and that way you can rotate them properly and you know which place to put them. So let's go ahead and take these other tires off. And the way I'm doing that, I'm not doing anything fancy here. While the truck's on the ground, I'm just going to break them loose. And I have this is just a 2-foot breaker bar. And I got a set of impact sockets. It's just 21 mil for my truck. So the way I do this, when I'm taking them off, I like to use my body weight. Try to use my foot. That way I'm just not killing my back. And the reason why you want to just break these bolts loose while it's on the ground is because if you have it up in the air, what will happen is the tire will spin and you're not going to be able to break these loose. Alright, so I've gotten all the bolts broken loose from the tire, and the next thing I'm going to do is slide my jack under there, throw a jack stand under there for safety, and we'll put a winter tire up on here. Now we're ready to take this tire off all the way. And the way I like to do this, and it also saves me a little bit of time generally, So I have a Makita impact driver, and from here, I believe this might be a 3/8 inch socket head that just goes right into the receiver here. And then I have another socket converter. It goes from, I think that's 3/8 to 1/2 inch probably, something like that. And then that just goes right into my 1/2 inch 21mm socket. This saves a little bit of time. Now it's very important, you don't want to use a device like this if these lugs are still tight on here. The only reason I use this is so that these lugs will just spin off here real quick, and it saves a little bit of time, like that. If you hear any more than that, or you know that sound when this impact driver makes when it's struggling a little bit, like that, you get any more than what you just heard, you really want to stop and just spin these off a little bit further with your breaker bar. That way you don't do any kind of damage to your gun like this, because it's not designed to do any kind of intense impact on lugs like this. Got all those bolts loose. I'll give it a little knee at the top of the tire. You don't even need that. It's ready to come right off. I like to put a knee right here, and lift from the top. You want to try not to slide across your bolts here, where you don't damage the threads. Comes right off. That's it. So now the only thing with this tire I just took off, I did clean these when they were on the truck. This year I'm not gonna do a whole cleaning on the inside because they're starting to get so shitty I don't really care anyway. So I'm gonna take a black magic marker, and because this was on the front right, I'm gonna write on the rim here that this is gonna go on the passenger rear, so it's gonna have a PR on it. So while you're under here, it definitely doesn't hurt to take a peek at everything. You want to check your brake rotor. Couldn't hurt to check your brake pads. And you can check that by looking down the rotor here and seeing how much material you have left on your brake pads here. You want to just check if anything's loose, check for movement. But you don't want to push it around too much, because you are holding the vehicle up on the jack, so excessive movement can cause that jack to slip off. Even though we do have the jack stand, there is a chance that it could slip off, so just be wary of that. Also, what I'm checking for excessive rust. I'm checking all my boots, my ball joint boots, CV shaft, control arm, all that good stuff. Put this new shock in about a year ago, and the boot down at the bottom where it touches the A-arm down there, boot's actually starting to dry rot already. So kind of disappointed in that, but it'll be fine for now. And yeah, you can also check your ball joints by getting a what are they called? You know, a mechanic's pry bar. You can just push up along here and see how much movement you have back and forth. You can also do this while you have the tire on here if you want, but anyway, let's put the tire back on here. And so the tire that's going to go up here, I'm going to go to my winter tires now. I'm going to look for the tire that says passenger front, PF. So let me get that tire and we'll throw it right back on here. Before I do that, one other thing I want to talk about real quick. So you see how clean my frame is? Granted, there's a few little spots, but the reason why this truck holds up so well and the frame's not rotten like most plow trucks, granted this has only been through three seasons, but after the end of every season, I go under here, go completely underneath all the components of the frame, and I look for any kind of rust, and I'll sand it down, wire brush, do whatever I got to do to get as much rust off as possible. And then from there, I'll go in with a couple cans of Rust-Oleum, and I'll spray paint all that rust and just make sure that it doesn't spread further. Rust to me on a truck is kind of like cancer. If you don't catch it and stop it, then it just keeps spreading and it keeps corroding and ruining crap. So if you want to know the key to making a plow truck frame last, because you hear guys talking, oh, my plow truck frame's rotten. Well, that's because he never went under there and took care of the thing. So again, that can be applied towards any vehicle too, especially if you're driving it a lot in the salt. It's really not that hard to do. It's just a pain in the balls. But maybe we'll do a video of that in the spring, so you guys can understand how much it sucks if you don't do that already. But anyway, that's my spiel. Let's get this tire on here. Alright, so I got my tire here. And same thing as I did before, the way I like to lift tires is I try and use my knees as much as possible. You don't want to, use your back, you want to use your knees. So what I like to do, I like to rest the knee here, right here, and then hold up in the center, so that way most of the weight is transferred to my knees. I'm just going to line this up with the lugs. Make sure it's seated on there properly. I generally go with the top lug first. Spin on the bottom lug. That way it's just kind of seated. And then I can rock this a little bit. If I push it up forward, it's going to be held on the bottom lug, and that way I can tighten down the top lug. Same thing with the bottom. Just make sure it's seated in there properly. Then from there, I'll just start the rest of these lugs. Go in there with my driver, and I'll just spin these on until they just touch. Again, don't crank down on this thing. You'll definitely fuck up your gun, or you'll break one of your attachments here. But so that's seated on there now. And now I'm going to go around and do the rest of the tires on the truck. And after I do the rest of the tires, once all these tires are back on the ground, I'm going to go around with my torque wrench, which you'll see in a couple minutes. And then we will torque these down to the proper torque, which is 150 foot-pounds for my truck. Of course, you always want to lower this down nice and easy. After all said and done, after we finish torquing all these down too, I'm just going to want to make sure I go through, and I want to make sure I have the proper inflated pressure in all these tires. Alright, so now I got all my tires on. I'm going to break out my handy dandy torque wrench. This is a Husky model 564464, and the way this works is you have two types of measurements. You have Newton meters and you have foot-pounds. I know for my truck we need to be at 150 foot-pounds of torque for these lugs to be tensioned properly. And I'm not sure you can see that, but there's a series of measurements here. Rough measurements from 160, 145, 130. I think they go in increments of 15. And then on this twistable dial here, this ring right here locks whatever measurement you have in place, or unlocks it. And right now it's unlocked, and then you have 15 different numbers on here, and then you can fine adjust to what specific pound you want to put on here. So right now I have it set at 145 and 5 on the dial here, so that brings us to 150, and it's locked in there. I'm going to put my 21mm socket back on the end here, and I'm going to start torquing these down. And the pattern I like to go in is the mechanic star pattern. One other tip when you're doing this, it's a good idea to keep your tires perfectly straight. This one's on an angle a little bit, so I'm going to have to use my back to do these ones, unfortunately. So what you do, you make sure your socket's seated in there all the way, and you come up till you hear a click. Again, if you're doing it with your back, you want to use your legs. That's why I'm squatting. There we go. You hear that click? That means it's at 150 foot-pounds. I'm going to do the one directly across from it. That's 2. I'm going to do the one across and below it now. I'm just going to star. go around one more time. It's kind of rough on the back. There we are. So now all these lugs are set on 150 foot-pounds. Next thing I need to do is put the hubcap on after I finish torquing down the rest of these tires. Okay, so all my tires have been torqued down to 150 foot-pounds. Last thing I need to do is simply put the hubcaps on. Now with my summer tires, my hubcaps are nice and shiny. They're kind of like that plasticky, they're chrome though, the plastic chrome. For the winter tires, these hubcaps are a little more beat up. They're not that shiny. So what I'm thinking maybe I'll do in the future is maybe I'd plasti-dip the rings all black, but use those shiny hubcaps, give it kind of like a police cruiser look, something like that. I think that'd look pretty cool. So stay tuned. I'll probably do a future video on that when I get around to it, which will probably be after this this winter. Anyway, putting these hubcaps back on is fairly simple. On the rims here, or on the hubcaps, you have this little, what do you call that? It is a piece of plastic that is not for the actual bolts, but that piece of plastic will go in this little hole, or this guidance hole. That way you know that you're putting the hubcap on in the right orientation. And if you use a rubber mallet, you could do a little bit of damage to it, but you know what, these things have so many scratches on them anyway, I don't really care anymore. Definitely don't want to use your hand though, because it's bad to bang your hand against anything. When you hear that little pop, you're good to go.